So I saw this movie a couple weeks back, and I don't know if you heard of it. It's called Elemental, right? And I want to talk about this movie because a lot of people did not like it, right? And I kind of understand because when I first saw it, I also didn't like it. But now I kind of like it. So let's just rewind, right? Going into this movie, I was this movie's biggest hater. I did not like The Good Dinosaur. I thought that movie was kind of awful. I think The Good Dinosaur has a interesting premise, but does nothing with it. And I think the characters specifically in that movie are the most bottom tier, most forgetful like Pixar characters ever. Like I don't hear anyone talking about those characters. No one is speaking highly of Spot, bro. No one is. Anyway, that's besides the point. So because of that movie and hearing that Peter Stone is also directing this movie, I was like, I don't know. I didn't like his last one. He might throw. I don't know. But after doing a bit more research and learning about how more personal the story was to him and how much more of a passion project this was, I was like, okay, I'll cut him some slack. So I saw the movie, and the first time I thought it was kind of mid. I thought it kind of suffered from similar issues to The Good Dinosaur, but it was ultimately a better movie. I think it is no less than good. I think it's a good movie with problems. So most of those problems are in the first act. I think the beginning. This is very light spoilers, but granted, if you've seen the movie and care about the movie, you already have now. It's been in the theaters for weeks. But in the beginning of the movie, I think the way we get to the romance aspect and how these characters meet, I think is not great. I think they could have made a more interesting plot that brings the two of them together. Um, but outside of that, I kind of like this movie. And the reason why is so after watching it the first day and calling it mid, thinking it was whatever, and I'm like, it was pretty, I guess, right? The second day, I kept thinking about the movie, and I was like, dang, I can't stop thinking about this movie. I kind of, do I like this movie? What's going on here? So normally I don't really rewatch movies in the theater unless I really, really like it. But this was a more of me like confirming because I was conflicted. I was like, it's weird. Like, why do I keep thinking about this movie? And I haven't thought this much about a Pixar movie since like Inside Out, post watching. So then I went and saw the movie again to kind of solidify my feelings. 'Cause I was like, what is it about this movie? And then I kind of came to the realization that this movie has very comfy vibes that I really like. Granted, I'm a sucker for romance anything. So just that entire like opposites attract love shit, I just love it, bro. Like I'm a sucker for it. So the entire vibe of that aspect of the movie is just very nice to me. And I really like just liked it. I liked seeing characters grow to like each other. I'm just a sucker for that. So when I saw it the second time, a lot of my issues with the first act started to not be as bad, right? Because in the beginning of the movie, if you haven't seen it, Wade, which is the main water guy, Wade Ripple, Wade essentially is this. He cries a lot. He's very empathetic, right? He's very good at making connections with people, and so his whole thing is that he cries a lot. That's a joke that may hit for you, may not. It's definitely not the greatest joke. It's honestly, this movie isn't very funny at all, but I like Wade. I think he's actually pretty likable. But in the beginning of the movie, when you watch it the first time, you don't know this about Wade. You don't know Wade or why he acts the way he does. So when he shows up and he's just crying, something about it felt sarcastic to me. And I know this definitely isn't the intention, but you just kind of see how he's acting, and he's like crying, like as if he cares about her situation as he's writing these citations to get her store shut down. And I don't really like this guy. It's kind of weird that he's like almost making fun of her in her face about what he's about to do. I was like, this is kind of strange. And she ends up chasing him or whatever to try and stop him from getting her place shut down. And then he literally sends the thing up and then is like, oh, why didn't you tell me that, your dad would be disappointed in you or whatever? And I was like, huh? I was like you didn't hear everything else she said before that? Like, I thought that was very much enough to make you genuinely feel empathetic to her situation. But apparently he needed that one little detail or whatever. So I think that aspect of them meeting, how they meet, why they start to like each other in the first place, I think that is really weak, and I just really wish they found a more interesting way for them to meet each other and for that relationship to grow and foster. I think the way we get to that point isn't very good, but what comes of it is actually pretty good. I like pretty much most of the stuff that comes after. It's really just that first act. I think the first act is really rough. But one thing I've seen a lot of people, I mean, a lot of people, for some reason, harp on with this movie is they've, I don't know why they think this. I don't know if the director has said this, but they see each element as like a race of people. And I think that's weird. They see like, so I can understand seeing the fire people as like Eastern Asian, descent, like something like that. I think that is intentional. But when people start to be like, oh, and the water people, or the black people, or the white people, and the soil people, and it's like, I didn't really get that vibe. Like, I think the fire people are just that. They are fire people. But their culture, right, is influenced by our real world, but by what we know as, like Asian immigrants and stuff like that, because the director happens to be, someone that has experienced a lot of the things you see in the movie, and they're putting it into this movie. So it's very personal to them. I don't think they would go out of their way to make, all right, and then these are going to be these people, and these are going to be that. Like, to me, that serves nothing. That literally does nothing for the movie. I think it's weird to even go into the movie thinking that. I think just take the story as is, as like, this is clearly meant to be relatable to anyone. I don't think you have to be Asian to relate to the immigration like aspect of the movie. There's like certain little things that maybe won't appeal to like all immigrant families, but I think the general like thing or theme of the movie is expectation, right? Expectation of your parents devoting everything to make sure you have this good life, and how that really affects a person and stresses them out. I actually really like those aspects of the movie. That's my favorite part of the movie. Sure, it's on the nose sometimes, but I think in general, I think it's done well for the most part. I don't think anything they do is bad. I think it just could be a little bit more subtle. So that whole aspect, I don't really understand any of the criticisms for it. I think a lot of those people are a little digging too deep into things. I don't really think that's the intention at all. But yeah, I think that aspect of the movie is really good. I think the general romance is pretty good. It's not the best, but it's pretty good. I'm a sucker for the opposites attract thing. I really love it, so it appealed to me. And then when I watched it the second time, a lot of the stuff that was in the first act that I really didn't like, with Wade crying and stuff like that, I actually started to see it differently because I now like Wade. So when I saw the movie the first time and know why he cries and that's genuine, when I see him act the way he does, I don't see it as like weird and like, why are you acting like that? You know what I mean? So I was like, okay. So a lot of my problems in the first act of the movie started to not be as bad. So I kind of came out of this with the movie is good. It's not bad. So if you hear anyone saying it's bad, I wouldn't let that stop you from watching it. I think it's actually a really sweet movie. It's really wholesome. If you like those vibes, if you want the very homey feeling, the cozy feeling, I think you should watch Elemental. I think it's pretty good. And this is coming from someone that was the biggest hater. You can ask anyone I know, I was the biggest hater, but now I kind of like it.